As I had a couple of days left on my Interrail pass, I thought I'd take advantage of the Ryanair £12.99 flight deal from Bristol to Porto in Portugal. Because yes, I'm here in Porto to do a true bucket list trip. And to do that, I must be at Porto São Bento station for about 9 in the morning. Well, there's building work outside for a new metro line, but inside it's still resplendent with around 20,000 azulejo tiles, which were all the work of Jorge Calosso. This really is a very special place, and it's the perfect place to start this remarkable journey. Because the train I'm going to take today is the 0920 to Pocinho, up the Douro Valley. Stepping through the archway, we reach the lovely engine shed and platforms. It's a wonderfully evocative place, somewhat frozen in time, primarily because the tightly packed city all around and the tunnel portals would make it impossible, I'd think, to extend the station in any direction at all. Although as a result, this once grand terminus is now the home of commuter and regional trains, the only ones that can fit into these platforms. And the local trains do seem prone to some very zealous graffiti. It's such a shame. Anyway, as we watch the trains come and go, I spy a man hanging around at the end of the platform near the tunnel portal. Looks like he wants a word. And good morning. Good morning in January, and here I am, not wearing a coat on a January morning in Porto, so that's good for a Brit. Specifically Porto São Bento. And I think this one really ticks all the boxes for a Johnny Hoover video. So what you kind of expect is interesting station architecture and maybe an interesting ride on an interesting train. And I think we've got all three, or three, depending on what country you come from. We've got all three boxes ticked here. Anyway, yeah, today I'm going to go up the Douro Valley on one of Portugal's most famous little railway lines that cuts up right up the valley into the hills to Pocinho. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. The train's just about to come in here on the platform 1. I'm not quite sure what it's going to be. Everything I've checked on the internet says that this will be the old carriages hauled by diesel locomotive, an old English electric diesel locomotive. But we have to wait and see. Of course, railways can change their plans and their rolling stock, or guess what? The internet can be wrong. Who knows? But anyway, only got 5 minutes to wait before the train actually gets chugged into platform 1, and we'll see how it goes. So while we wait, let's have a look at the route for today. With, of course, the immediate apology to any Portuguese speakers for the rest of the video, you're going to get some very bad pronunciations. We start off with a quick leg to Porto Campagna, and then a short northerly run up the main line to Ermesinda. After that, we will turn roughly easterly along the electrified commuter line, but we won't stop at any stations until we follow the Rio Sousa into Paradesh. And then we'll keep climbing up by the river until Caid, where a tunnel takes us through to the other side at Oliveira, and we head on down towards the Douro. At Marco de Canaveses, we leave the electrification behind, and shortly afterwards we hit the north bank of the Douro, and things get really scenic. And then, as we go along, there will be stations clinging to the water's edge as we pass through the biggest town of Régua and on to the tourist hotspot of Pinhão, where lots of passengers will alight. But after Pinhão, there's still an hour to go along the most beautiful section of the line. Just before Ferradoza, the line crosses the river, and we therefore roll into Pocinho on the south side of the water. This amazing journey is scheduled to take 3 hours and 18 minutes to cover the 175 kilometres, or 109 miles from start to end. That gives an average speed of 53 kilometres per hour, or 33 miles per hour, which, coincidentally, is about the same average speed as the UK line from Inverness to Kyle of Lacouch that I travelled on recently. And hooray, our train comes in, drawn by a Class 2600 electric locomotive, and behind it comes a rake of Schindler coaches which date back all the way to the 1940s. And right by the diesel loco is a Sorafame classic car. These date from between 1963 and 1984. And here's our motive power. It's a Class 1400 diesel electric. These are based on the UK's Class 20 locomotives, and the first 10 of this class were built by English Electric. This one, however, 1424, was built in Portugal, We have a few minutes before departure, so let's take a look at the coaches we have for today. Well, this one is an old third-class coach built by Schindler in the 1940s, and isn't it beautifully restored? It looks to be in a 3+2 configuration, and I do wonder how full it gets in the summer months. Being the train spotter that I am, I'm heading up to the front coach so we can hear a lot more from that wonderful English electric diesel engine when we finally get going. And actually, this coach looks a bit more comfortable too. Well, that's great, we lucked out. We've definitely got the old loco haul train. Isn't it fantastic? So yeah, station done, cute train done. So let's get out there and have a look at this line all the way down through the valley. After a tunnel or two and a bit of bridge spotting, the train pulls into Porto Campania station, which is the station where the Intercity and Alpha Pendular trains all call. I will be back here tomorrow to catch my train to Lisbon on one of CP's Alpha Pendular trains, so look out for that trip report on the channel soon. And then we're out along the main northbound line through the Porto suburbs. And I doubt we're ever going to get much faster than this, as our Class 1400 can only manage a top speed of about 100 kilometers per hour. Beyond Paradesh there are some lovely old vineyards by the trackside. Penafiel has a modern concrete station, but just beyond that, the old station building is still there. Just before Caid, we are met by the early morning train from Pocinho coming the other way. And then we plunge into the tunnel and pop out with, well, completely different weather. I was not expecting this mist. I do hope it doesn't hang around too long. However, this really is a lovely stretch of line as we head south for the Douro. And as we await an oncoming commuter train to clear the single-line section, there's always time for the staff to have a cigarette. And then the English electric whine comes in strong as we accelerate away. This is the life. These valleys are really lovely. What a great start to the trip. And then suddenly, there it is. The panoramic views of this majestic waterway is a breathtaking start to this riverside section. Oh boy, this really is wonderful. Mosteiro, if that's how you pronounce it, is the first of quite a few small stations with amazing views from the platform. It really is cool when you turn a corner or pop out of a short tunnel or cutting to find yourself right on the water's edge. The Douro Valley line was actually built as an international through route. The western section of the line that we've already traversed was opened in 1875, and the line reached Pocinho in early 1887, and by the end of that year the link right through to Salamanca in Spain was complete. However, over on the Spanish side, Renfe closed their section of line to the border in 1984, and the Portuguese were therefore obliged to close their short section to the border too. And then, 4 years later, the line was further truncated to terminate at Pocinho. I have read there are hopes to reinstate the line back to the border town of Barca da Alva, and if that happens, I will definitely be returning. However, looking at Google's satellite view of the Spanish side, there are a lot of tunnels and bridges there, so I would not hold your breath waiting for the Spanish to reinstate their portion of the line. As we go along on both sides of the river, we can see terraces for the vineyards. As we pull away from the riverbank, our Class 1400 has to open up on the incline. At Reida we meet a CP Class 592 diesel multiple unit. The 592s also work the line alongside the loco hauled stock, and the Camel nickname refers to the roof-mounted air conditioning units. I'm very pleased to be not riding on one, although I do wonder if the locals prefer them when it's hot, as at least they do have air conditioning. Reguá is the largest settlement on the route, and there's quite a lot of people getting on and off. These double-faced Portuguese railway clocks are a delight. I'm so pleased to see so many of them up and down the line. Reguá is also an important crossing point with its 3 bridges, the newest carrying the A24 high over the river, which we get a great view of as we cross the River Corgo and continue on our way. The beautiful little wayside stations keep coming, and Covilhães is no exception, with lovely tiling and a 2-face clock. And once again, as our wheels skim close to the water's edge, the Class 1400 drags us onwards. In fact, now I mention the locomotive, let's get an even closer look and listen as we climb up away from the river. And whilst we're having a wander, this old carriage is well decked out for tourists to bring cycles, and there's room for many of them here at the front. This really is a magical ride, and you know what? We still haven't got to the best bits. And as we start to approach Pinhão, most of my tourist colleagues ready themselves to part company with the train, because Pinhão is really the last true tourist destination on the route, with cafes, restaurants, wineries, and the chance to switch to and from rivercraft. All that being said, I think it's a poor choice to miss out on the last hour on the train, and you will soon get to see why. We cross the River Tua and then come to Tua station itself to meet the 11:08 departure from Pocinho. And it's great news that both trains are running spot on time. There's just a few moments for the crews to exchange pleasantries, and then we're back on our way. Now, there used to be a narrow gauge line that ran north from Tua, and this looks to be the only remnants. Okay, as it's a historic train, let's have a quick toilet tour. Yes, anything you put down the toilet will indeed land on the track below, but the facilities are all stocked and working and pretty clean. There's even a vanity light and maybe a working shaver plug. Altogether, not bad for a toilet on a train that is about 60 years old. And whilst I've been in the toilet, we've entered the much steeper gorge as we head on up to where the Douro is much younger. And once again, Alegria is a little station that has truly some of the best platform views to be found anywhere in Europe. Nobody boards or leaves the train, but also nobody complains about the pause as they enjoy the moment. And of course, if you stop, it means the Class 1400 has to accelerate again. Just up the line is the Valira Dam and hydroelectric plant. But we only get a quick look before we plunge into one of the many short tunnels, and then we burst out to this amazing view. Honestly, I can't imagine why you'd want to leave the train before seeing this. At Ferradoza, the line crosses the Douro on the one and only occasion on the whole trip. Without a breath of wind up here, the river's glassy reflections are incredibly special. You know, this is why I do this YouTube thing for sure. Well, I hope they get the clock fixed at Vargalash, but just imagine sharing a bottle sat around that concrete table awaiting the Porto train as the afternoon cools into the evening. So I'll be quiet now and we can enjoy these last views of the river. And then finally we briefly say goodbye to the Douro as it snakes northwards. But we shortened the trip to Pocinho by passing through our final tunnel of the journey. The smokestacks of the Pocinho concrete factory mark our destination in the distance as we make one last sweep through the vineyards and the olive groves. And here we arrive at 12:38, spot on time, journey's end. And now there's just 30 minutes to wait before the train reverses to return us to Porto. But not before the crew have time to eat a snack, use the bathroom and no doubt smoke the odd cigarette or two. Like all the stations on the line, Pocinho is a pocket beauty. The exterior two-faced clock is complemented by a really cool little waiting room with antique weighing scales and a grandfather clock still ticking its way through the decades. There's just a little time before we leave to get a closer look at the engine just one more time. And here we are at Pocinho, and it's not, as you might have thought, some kind of Brazilian football player, but in fact a railway station here, and isn't it great? It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I hope you've enjoyed that run. I mean, you can imagine I enjoyed it. It was everything it was cracked up to be. If you've got any chance of ever riding on this train, then do it. Do it while you still can, because you never know when they're going to stop doing it. So please, get over to Porto, get on this train. It was absolutely fantastic, absolutely brilliant, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, give it a like, subscribe, all that stuff. And yeah, thank you very much for getting to the end of another Johnny Hoover video. And thank you very much, and thank you to all of you who watch and comment. Yes, if you've any good ideas of anything else a bit like this that I ought to be doing, then do drop me a note in the comments, and I'll see if I can get there. In the meantime, from Pocinho here in the beautiful Douro Valley in Portugal, it's goodbye and thank you so much for watching. And with that, I hopped onto the rearmost Schindler carriage to try out one of those for the ride back to Porto. And I obviously could not resist just taking a few photos on the way. And earlier in the video I mentioned another classic waterside trip. So, if you've not yet seen it, why not share a ride with me from Inverness to historic Kyle of Lochalsh?